The Chicago Bulls' big three, and Coby White, Nikola Vucevic, and Zach Levine do something that no Bulls trio has ever done. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about and answer the question many Bulls fans are asking themselves after seeing the play of Zach Levine and Nikola Vucevic. Why are the Bulls looking to trade either one of those players? We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And the Chicago Bulls big three, Nikola Vucevic, Zach Levine, Coby White, are the first trio in franchise history to each score 25 points while making 5 or more three-pointers. They're only the 7th trio in NBA history to accomplish this as well. And while it's a great stat, it's a great bulletin board thing and all that type of stuff, I mean, it really doesn't matter. And I'm not one to crap on accomplishments. Like, yeah, it's great that this trio was able to do something that has never been or has rarely been done in the NBA. That's great, right? Make no mistake about it. But this team is still well below 500. This team is still probably going to win about 30 games this season. This team is still not a great team overall. And when it comes down to it, like, these accomplishments are great when you look at just because people aren't necessarily going to go back and when they look at the trios that were able to accomplish this, they're not really going to go back and look and say, how many games did they win up into that point? It's not really going to be that. But, like, as a Bulls fan and hearing this, like, all I heard was like, hey, that's really cool. Like, make no mistake about it. It's cool. It's great. But the thing that I was impressed of more than the Chicago Bulls trio making some history is how this team responded after getting their asses kicked at home. That's what I'm more intrigued by than some arbitrary stat that I guarantee most people never even thought about, the number of trios that all scored 25 points while making 5 three-pointers or more. I can guarantee nobody woke up yesterday thinking, hey, you know what? I would love to see the Bulls do this. That it's never been done in franchise history. I would love to see them do this tonight. No, we wanted a dub. And that is the most important thing. The way that the Bulls responded on the road yesterday, it was more important than this stat to me, right? The Bulls are 5-4 on the road. They actually have a winning record on the road. They're 1-5 at home. And when you look at, like, Coby White's words after the loss against Houston and saying that loss was a disservice to the fan base and a historic organization, the Bulls responded. That is the most important thing to me. When you look at how this team came in with some edge, right? And no, it's not just the Dalen Terry double technical foul with Isaiah Stewart. It's not just the highlight reel dunks from Zach Levine and Julian Phillips. While all of those things are great fun to watch within a game, and make no mistake about it, it's not just that. It's the fact that this team responded well. Like, there were times in this game, in even the prior game against Houston, that would have put the Bulls out. The Detroit Pistons had a 10-2 run in this game, and it was tied with 8 minutes left. And when you look at the way that this Detroit Pistons team just did not go away, right? That's the thing of this game. The Pistons kept chipping away. Yes, the Bulls led throughout most of the game, which is great. But the way that they responded to the runs by the Detroit Pistons is not something that we've always come to see with this team. And before people get to saying, well, it was the Detroit Pistons are not the same team that they were last year. Now, I'm not in any way saying that this is a Pistons team that just is amazing or anything like that, but this is a Pistons team that is playing a lot better than what they were last season under a new head coach, and they're playing a lot more scrappy. They're using their players to a better utilization than what they did last season and things like that. So this is an important win, right, in the sense that they needed this win for morale, for the fan base, and for the players. And so because of that, that's the most important thing to me in this. That's the thing that I'm looking at, and I'm taking away from this game, and it's the one thing that stands out to me the most is that this team, after some turmoil and adversity, they responded, at least in this game, well. Now they gotta keep it going, and this is a good week for the Bulls to kind of try to find their rhythm again, because all the opponents we have left, we've already beaten at least once this season. And so, not to say that just because we beat them in the past, it means that we are going to beat them in the future. No, it does not mean that. But it does mean that these are teams that the Bulls have found some success against in the past. The Bulls right now are back to 9th in the Eastern Conference, which, take that for what you will. Like I've personally said, standings don't really mean much right now. But you got teams like Brooklyn who was fifth at one point, come all the way back down. Like, even though the Bulls are ninth in the Eastern Conference, you got to look at it. They are like one game behind being the fifth seed. That's just what it is in the Eastern Conference. And I don't look at, like, some people look at the Eastern Conference and say the Eastern Conference is weak. I mean, they're not as strong as the Western Conference. Make no mistake about it. I still don't look at this as a weak conference. I just think that there's a lot of parity in this conference. There's a lot of the teams are all like margin between each other is very small, right? So I think anywhere between like 5 all the way down to maybe 10, we could see it finish with a margin of like 3 to 5 games, right? So, and that could change as the season continues to go on. But the way that this team, like I said earlier, responded was the most important thing in this game. And of course, the way that it ebbed and flowed, like Nikola Vucevic and Coby White kept the Bulls in this game in the first half. Their performances in the first half have had the Bulls with a really nice lead coming out of that first half. Then going into the second half, Zach Levine scores 20 points, 18 of those being in the fourth quarter. And it wasn't just him, but of course he is going to be the story, right? But you look at players like Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry, these guys making defensive plays when needed, energy plays when needed. That's what this team needs. This team is going to need performances like that. And so Vooch just continue to be the most consistent Bull this season, which I know has surprised a lot of people. Like, Vooch went from the depths of hell to having one of his best, probably his best season as a Chicago Bull. But 17 points in the first half from him, 13 first half points from Coby White, right? Only 5 from Zach Levine, but you got 8 as well from Jalen Smith. You got 7 of Ayo Dosunmu's, not 9 points in the first half of this game. And this team they did not allow the Detroit Pistons to overtake the lead. Now, they got tied briefly, but the Bulls came marching right back. And that's what you appreciate to see in this game from the Chicago Bulls. 19 points off the bench today. I'm sorry, that was just in the first half. When you look at the points off the bench, 24 points off the bench for the Chicago Bulls yesterday. That's a really important thing. You need that one. You need that one. The Bulls led for 42 minutes and 26 seconds in this game out of a 48-minute game. It was tied for a little bit there. The Detroit Pistons had the lead for 1 minute and 19 seconds. Like, again, is it a staple win? No. But it is an important win to try to start corralling some things and to get yourself together. And I love the fact that Coby White called things out, and that, not saying it's just because Billy Donovan said some things, Zach Levine said some things, and they responded. And Billy Donovan talked about that after the game, saying just grit, toughness, fight back. At some point, you have to make a stand physically, and we tried to make a stand physically. That was certainly not what we did at all Sunday night against the Houston Rockets. So, hey, the Bulls make a stand, and they can't have a chance to make a longer-term stand now as well, and maybe start corralling. And that's when I'll start saying, hey, maybe things are starting to correct themselves for the Bulls. We got Milwaukee coming up on Wednesday. We go to Milwaukee, and then we got 2 games at home against Atlanta and Memphis. Not to say that those games are going to be easy. No, but we've beat both those teams before. So, again, if you're going into and wanting to kind of build off some confidence, having some opponents that you've already had success against can help that confidence for sure as well. So, how the Bulls finish this week is going to be important. You look at going into next week, they got Washington, Orlando, Boston. Next week, that Boston matchup, that's going to be a tough one, right? But, the Bulls right now, like, they're trying to find the rhythm, and they're trying to find their balance. And while I still, I've said it multiple times, nothing's going to really change my outlook other than sustained success over a period of time for this Bulls team. This is a team that, as I've said many times before, the button-mashing Bulls offense is going to have them looking amazing in some games. And they can string a couple of those together, build some rhythm. Like, I still think they're going to have to grow in the half-court actions. They're going to have to grow in not allowing big runs. Like, they still got to learn to put their foot on the necks of teams and not make it interesting and close down the stretch, which this game was against a Detroit Pistons team that's been playing solidly. I won't say overly well, but they've been playing really solidly. And so the Bulls just got to keep chipping away, man. They just got to keep chipping away and make it through this season. And the storyline of the season is going to be what the storyline is going to be. Like, there's not a big reason why to, like, harping on one thing or not when it comes to this Bulls team. We're going to win some games. We're going to be a fun team. We're going to be exciting at times. We're going to get frustrated at development. We're going to be bad defensively at times as well. We still gave up, I think, 50 points in the paint tonight, right? So that's still the thing there. Like, the Bulls' issues are still the issues. But when you're shooting the way that the Bulls did in this game, 50% from three-point range, at 23 of 46 shooting. When the Bulls are making those level of shots while not turning the ball over much, only 10 turnovers in yesterday's game, you're going to be able to be in games, right? But the bigger question now is how much are you going to be able to sustain that? That's the biggest question for this team. It's not can they do it, it's how often and frequent can they do it to where it's an asset for this team. That is the biggest question for the Chicago Bulls team. And that's one that, you're not going to have an answer to until you get into the meat of the season and you find the ways that you just go. And so we'll see. But this is a week that the Bulls could have a solid week. Now, make no mistake about it. This Bulls team could still disappoint, right? Like I want to be clear there, but I do think that this is a week. If we're looking at any week where the confidence can be built and start rolling for the Bulls, this is a week to do that. You got Milwaukee, who is playing better, right? I mean, the Milwaukee has one of the best defenses in the NBA in the month of November so far, and it seems like wins are going to start coming for that team sooner rather than later. You got Atlanta, a scrappy team that always plays us close, but we've had their number for a little while now. And then you got Memphis, a team that it took a lot of effort to beat, but you show that. And again, if that confidence is rolling over the course of this week, you can get into that place where you're going to make it work. Now, one of the questions coming out of last night's game, and it's always it's always fun to see after Vooch and Zach have really good games, how you have your part of the fan base that says, bet, let's get this trade value up. We should be able to move them. This is going to make us get even more. Look at the way Zach's playing defense. Look at the fourth quarter Zach Levine had. Vooch has been consistent. How many picks can we get for Nikola Vucevic, right? And then you have your fan base that are saying, hold up, wait a second. Why are we looking to move these two players right now? What are we going to, and a question that people ask, what are we going to get back that's better? So to answer the question, why would the Bulls, if they're considering, because again, all we right now have is rumors and rumblings. Right now, we can look at the direction that the team has gone. We can look at some of the non-answers from Arturas Karnisovas during the Bulls media day to point towards some things. But when it comes down to it, it's really the first and foremost thing is the front office's own incompetence. That's really what it comes down to. Between the not being able to put out and to put a team together that is actually a threat in the Eastern Conference to do anything. I'm talking about win a playoff series, upset a team. This is not a team that's that team. I'm sorry. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Like, at the end of the day, no matter what and how good this team looks, we can talk about, well, if they could just do this, they can't do this every night. We've seen it. The data's been there. Even when they had a better and more sound, well-rounded team on offense and defense, they couldn't do it consistently night in and night out. A younger team that's still learning how to win, they're not going to be able to do it night in and night out. So the front office's own incompetence to put out a team that can actually go in the playoffs and win a playoff series, that's the first reason why this front office could be looking to move Nikola Vucevic and Zach. And then, of course, there are some of the minutia things, right? Zach Levine's contract and how much that could hurt the Bulls, going forward, even though the Bulls' actual contract outlook is looking pretty good. Yes, they do have to re-sign Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu's contracts are coming up soon. Josh Giddey's contract's coming up soon, right? So the Bulls sitting in a place where they got to look at it and ask themselves, like, can we realistically put out a team that's this close to the luxury tax? And we know that the Bulls do not pay the luxury tax. Now, they have considerable space. They're $57 million below the luxury tax next year. Now, if Josh Giddey gets a $20 to $25 million contract, that's going to eat up about half of that. But that still leaves you more than what the Bulls have had the last few seasons to go out there and maybe sign somebody for the mid-level exception that can help this team, right? You have your draft pick maybe as well, right? $121 million projected the season after that. But then by that time, you got Giddey, Ayo, Coby, all that are going to be looking for new deals, and Dalen Terry as well at that point in time if the Bulls decide to keep him. So, money does play a part into this because the Bulls do like to stay beneath the luxury tax. They do not want to go into that apron there. That's going to be a big reason why. Now, the Bulls are always spend over the salary cap, but they don't spend over the luxury tax, which there is two different things there. And then now the second tax apron is another thing. So there's three different levels there, right? There's a space between the salary cap and the luxury tax where the Bulls always live. A lot of franchises live, and they just don't pay the luxury tax, right? So that is an aspect that plays a part into this as well. And then it also is you have to take a realistic view on where you feel this team can go. And regardless of how Bulls fans feel on it, the front office may look at this and say, we're not going to put out a championship. We're not going to put out a team that can even really make it to the second round of the playoffs during this time. So what if the Bulls failed at doing? They failed at striking while players' value was high. And I think that's a big part of this as well for this front office is, and again, I'm not saying I agree with all these things, so let's be clear here. I'm just looking at what the reality of it is and what this front office is looking for if they do decide to move off these guys. The money definitely plays a part into that, right? If you can eliminate at least part of Zach Levine's $45 million contract and not have to pay that for the next 3 years, add some flexibility, get some expiring contracts that expire before Zach Levine's deal gets done, and God forbid you can get some picks in that as well. Again, that helps the future outlook. That's why the Bulls would be looking to move Vooch and Zach Levine, because they're no longer just living in the present, right? They're now trying to live and focus on the future of what this team could be. And unfortunately, when you have a player well over 30 in Nikola Vucevic and a player in Zach Levine that's approaching being over 30, it changes some things, right? It changes some things for the direction of your franchise. And that ultimately is if the Bulls do look to move on from both these guys, why it would be, because they're looking to change the direction of the franchise, which is going to come via more losing at times, right? Like it could very well come from that. Or if the Bulls do get lucky in a draft pick, maybe the change in direction and losing isn't necessarily as long as what would be projected either. But so that's the situation. Then when you look at Nikola Vucevic, it just comes down to this. Vuc's age at being already 34 years old, the fact that he has 1 year left on his deal after the season, which the Bulls could wait till he's an expiring deal, but as an older player that's, reaching that age, they risk maybe the decline hitting, right? Which it looked like it was going. Vooch had declined every year. Now he stepped back up, right? So that puts the Bulls in a place where they're like, okay, bet this player that was on a decline statistically, let's now shift and look towards, let's take advantage of the way that he's playing, because now we can possibly get more than when he was in this decline. Now, I know a lot of Bulls fans look at things as well and say, let's not trade Zach and Vooch. They're doing good. Let's move Patrick Williams. Let's move Dalen Terry. Let's move players that are playing bad. The problem is with that is that this Bulls team, if they do look to move on to those guys, they're looking to get assets. They're just not looking to move to gain a roster spot or something. They're looking for what assets that they can gain. In moving Lonzo right now, especially considering the biggest thing with Lonzo was his injury concern, he's not healthy again. That's not going to really get you anything back. The bald-headed hoe Javon Carter isn't going to get you anything back. Spicy Denzel Valentine and Chris Duarte isn't going to get you anything back, right? Torrey Craig, as a veteran that kind of understands his role, maybe can get you back a second or something low like that. But then again, the Bulls aren't playing him, so it's really hard to really showcase him. Whereas last year at the trade deadline, you got offered 2 second-round picks for Andre Drummond. That's because Drum was actually playing and playing well at that, right? So the problem is as well, right? Even with this, if this is where the Bulls are if they look to not move on from them, which is still a possibility. I want to be clear here, right? While the outlets and the rumors and everything are talking about it as if it's a fact that they're going to be looking to move on from these guys, it very well may be. But again, I tell you, take everything from writers with a grain of salt. As long as Billy Donovan is still the head coach of this team, the Bulls may continue to try to live in two worlds, right? Because Billy typically is not a coach that likes to rebuild. So if the Bulls try to, once again, live in both worlds, right, where they try to do both at the same time, compete and develop, they failed at that before. And, now even with Modest and Dalen Terry playing a little bit more, I've called out and said, are they really they're not really having a development plan for them. Now they're developing via getting minutes, which, some could say is the most important part. But your young guy in Modest Bucilis, not really getting minutes. He had played 2 minutes in last night's game, right? So that living in two worlds is always a thing to kind of hold back development. So if this Bulls team is going to go to a place where they want to prioritize development, I don't think they can do so. And I'm not saying that generally in the NBA you can't do so. I don't think this specific front office has shown an ability to develop while playing and trying to win games. I just don't think that they've shown the ability to do that. Maybe that changes over time. We're still very early into the season. Maybe that changes as well, but they haven't shown that. So this front office may, if they really want to prioritize development, they may have to remove the safety net and put themselves in an uncomfortable position for them and actually try to develop these guys and have that at the forefront of what this team is trying to do. I doubt how long it's going to happen as long as Billy Donovan is the coach. Personally, I just don't think they'll be able to do both well while Billy Donovan is the head coach running your team and running your day-to-day. That's my personal opinion. I'm not going to crap on anybody who views it differently, But that's really what and that's why I wanted to start this off by saying it really comes down to the front office's own incompetence, right? Because let's say this, the Bulls could have been in a position to not have to, or to still try to compete and develop had they moved Andre Drummond when Andre Drummond's value was high, where they could have got something back. Had they made the decision, hey, this season, it is what it is. We're in asset mode. If they moved Alex Caruso at last year's trade deadline, where reportedly you could have gotten multiple first back, right? If they would have moved Zach Levine when they got offered that package by the Knicks, which I think it came to 3 first-round picks, one of those being unprotected, if I'm not mistaken there. But unfortunately, they did not, right? And so now they sit in a place where they have some chips, and then you have to know, hey, if we're going to move these chips, we got to make a decision here soon, because we can't continue to be that team that holds on to everything and eventually nothing comes out of it because we held it too long, right? And I think that's a big part where this is for this Bulls team right now. And we'll see where it goes and how it develops. But we'll be talking about it all right here at Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.